This is Echoes, a Ukrant podcast. In it, Christine Boomsma, Rob van der Wal, and me, Tom Wilcox, introduce you to remarkable people and extraordinary events from 4 centuries of UG history. From persecuted Scottish students fleeing to 17th century Groningen, to a Russian spy seducing a UG physicist. This is White Moors, about Petrus Camper, who, in 1766, went in search of differences between white people and people of colour. Be advised, this episode discusses historical racist theories. There was a corpse on the table. The body belonged to an elderly man of colour. The professor standing behind the table called him by a different term. That professor, an imposing figure with bright brown eyes, heavy eyebrows, and red apple cheeks, would not have known that a word that was completely normal for him would be particularly inappropriate centuries later. It was April 16th, 1766, a time when slave trade was in full swing and people of colour were routinely referred to using the N-word. The professor behind the table took up his scalpel and looked up at the audience. The benches of the anatomical theatre, located in the former sacristy of Groningen's Broerkerk, were packed. People from far and wide had bought a ticket to see how the famous Petrus Camper was going to find out whether there was actually a difference between black and white people. It wasn't just a time when the N-word was still commonplace. It was also a time when many people wondered whether people of colour were actually people, and not some kind of ape. And they wondered where this black skin colour came from. It was an issue that was hotly debated. There were scientists who were sure that people of colour had black blood and black brains, that people of colour were the cursed offspring of Noah's son, Ham, who was said to have turned black when he had made fun of his father for being drunk. There were those who believed they had turned black because they'd been burned, or that black people were the result of sexual relations between humans and monkeys. These explanations had something else in common. They were used to justify selling black people from Africa as slaves to the Americas and Southeast Asia. A trade in which the Dutch West India Company played a key role and from which Groningen profited handsomely. But Petrus Camper believed none of this. He was a versatile scientist, a physician, anatomist, a botanist, and a zoologist. A child of the Enlightenment who believed in experimentation. If he wanted to know something, he sought it out. But he went very far in this. For instance, he asked a former student to provide him with the head of a South African Khoikhoi woman. The fact that his student robbed a grave to acquire this head was of no interest to him. What mattered to him was the science, the knowledge. In this instance, too, he was only interested in the science. He would demonstrate that there were no fundamental differences between black and white people. So he put his scalpel into the elderly man's skin on his cutting table. And under the watchful eye of dozens of people, he dissected the body. A short time later, everyone could see it. The brain was white, not black. The blood was red. But he didn't stop there. Almost immediately, he moved on to another body and uncovered the brain of a white man. His brain, too, was white, even slightly less white than that of the old man of colour. His blood, too, was red, though no one was surprised at that. See, Camper must have thought. See for yourself. There is no difference. This was not the first time he had a black body on his cutting table. The professor, who had come to Groningen in 1763, had previously worked in Amsterdam. There, he had dissected an Angolan boy in 1758, finding that his brains were white and his blood was red. In Amsterdam, he had compared his findings to the way Edward Tyson had described the anatomy of a chimpanzee in 1699. I must confess I found nothing which had more in common with this animal than with a white person. On the contrary, Everything was the same, he later recounted during a public lecture in Groningen. During that same lecture, he showed his audience that the skin of black people was black because of pigmentation. The epidermis was thin and translucent in all people. Underneath is a layer of color. The skin underneath was again the same for all types of people. He proved this by showing his audience a patch of skin he had cut from the body of an Italian sailor. People saw the slightly tinted skin and a tattoo, the ink of which was in that second layer of skin. They were also shown a patch of skin from a black man and one that had been cut from the chest of a white woman. And each time only the middle layer was colored. And so, Camper told his audience, we are white Moors, or rather, we are human beings equal to the blacks in every regard, except that our middle layer of skin has less color. Petrus Camper remained in Groningen until 1773, when his wife urged him to return to Friesland. He died there in 1789 from inflammation of the pleura. He would have been shocked to know what was happening less than 100 years later. His anatomical work would be used to spread very different ideas. Drawings of his skull measurements were misused in racist theories. While he had made them to map physiological differences between human types, they were now used to portray black people as primitive. This was never his intention, and he made that clear years before during his lecture in which he said, "We would all wish to be black if we could wipe off this reproach from us, not only as human beings, but also as Christians, with such a color change." Petrus Camper's collection is managed by the University Museum Groningen. An exhibition on Petrus Camper is on display there until September 21st, 2025. More literature can be found in the show notes. This episode was written and researched by Christine Boomsma. Sound and technique by Rob van der Wal. Voice, Tom Wilcox.